In this episode, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the history of marketing in this planet, and I will give you my recommendations on the marketing that's working today. My name is Manuel Suarez, and we're going to talk about the history of marketing right now. So this is something that I found very interesting because it has changed so fast and so dramatically that we don't even notice it somehow. But there's been an enormous variety of marketing. The first thing that I want to go over is the types of marketing that exist on this planet. And it all boils down to two types of marketing. Throughout history, we've had something called outbound marketing. Outbound means you're reaching out trying to get customers. Throughout history, you had people on speaker phones, and you had people on radio, and you had people on television and newspapers and magazines. They were reaching out trying to get customers. Outbound marketing. That's the way that historically marketing has worked in this world until social media came about, until the internet came about, and it became a lot of it inbound marketing. Inbound means the customers are reaching out to you. For example, here, I'm trying to get attention for people to call us and ask us for our help. I'm trying to get marketing out to people in a different format, meaning I'm giving them value and I'm educating them, I'm inspiring them, I'm entertaining them, I'm doing other things to capture that attention that at some point comes back to me because they want our business. That's the main difference between these two. So let's go over the history of marketing since the beginning of the word marketing. Throughout another 300 years or so, all the way to 1700, until then, we actually did just traditional printing, and the printing thing became that people were actually reading all the time, and the printing press became high technology, super high-tech stuff in which they can print newspapers and other things along the way. In 1839, we have posters. So let's find out where we at over here on these things. So print advertising, is it still going? It's dying. There is right now a little bit of a space that has an opportunity, which is media mail, that you can print some flyers and send it out to people on their mailboxes, and that still has some attention and some value. Why? Because on these mailboxes, a lot of people over the last couple of years, they have actually stopped paying attention. So a lot of marketers stopped doing media mail, which means that there's some attention there again that you can take advantage of. Print advertising has died every single year more and more. Magazines are dying. If you go to a doctor's office right now and you sit down on the waiting area, you're gonna see magazines on the floor. Sometimes these magazines are 20 years old. I'm exaggerating, of course, but at least a couple of months old or a year or two, and they're full of dust because nobody picks them up anymore. It's quite logical why they don't pick them up, because they can get more up-to-date information if they just pick up their phone. Why would you go to a magazine when you have your cell phone with the world that you have access to at that point? So magazines have been dying. Posters, somewhere around 1839, this became a huge deal. And if you go to the big cities, there are posters that have been there for decades sometimes. These posters in Los Angeles, in cities, in major cities in the US and around the world, were placed everywhere, on corners of streets, on walls, on lampposts, all over the place, and they promoted individual things. So much so that some of these cities had to make putting these posters on these places illegal. And it became like a huge marketing thing. Why? Because all they had to do was pay for the printing, and the actual placement was free. 1867, billboards became a thing, and you started doing all these billboard ads, and billboard was a massive trend that happened for a good 100 years or so or more. Even coming into the year 2000, there are still an enormous amount of companies right now doing billboard ads across the United States. And radio ads became a thing in 1920, and that was actually really effective for a lot of companies, and that was kind of like the big revolution of marketing. As you might know, all the sports were consumed on radio around that time. Baseball was huge on radio, and you had a lot of attention, especially the male demographic was very into radio. That was what they were focused on. It was radio advertising that was a big trend for a good 70, 80 years from that point on. So 1920 was when radio ads became a thing, and it helped a lot of companies grow aggressively. But as all good things, like they say, come to an end, this is pretty much dead. There's many reasons why radio is dead, just like billboards are dying. You can still put some spots in some places that have visibility, but in reality, there's so many other places that you can get a lot more bang for your buck that it doesn't quite make sense. On radio, if you invest advertising dollars on radio ads right now, you are probably gonna feel the pain because you're not gonna have the attention there that you need. People do not have their attention on radio anymore. Nobody cares about commercials anymore. Why would they actually listen to a commercial on a radio on the car when they have Apple Podcasts, or they have music, or they have Pandora, or they have Spotify? That's basically what we have right now. We have the existence of major platforms that have completely replaced radio. TV ads began in 1954, and it helped a lot of companies for a lot of time get enormous attention at a lower cost than even what radio was producing at that point. When TV ads came into existence, guess what happened to radio ads? It struggled. It immediately started going downhill, and from that point on, 1954, radio made less and less money every single year compared to what they were making before. So TV ads, just like everything else, comes in, penetrates, and takes over attention, and it started growing up in a big way. It started blowing up and getting all the attention of the big brands because the attention was extremely underpriced. One of the things that happened here around this time, not here actually, in 1984, right, in TV, you can see that there's a big 30 years into television ads over here, computers take off. Well, in 1984, Apple computers was starting to take off at that point, and they have Steve Jobs running the show. And in that year, in 1984, they actually invested on a Super Bowl ad. And I believe the total cost of the Super Bowl ad was $900,000. That's what they invested, which at that point was a lot of money. They reached 50% of the people with a television set in the United States. So imagine that, $900,000. It's still a lot of money at that point. It reached 1 out of every 2 homes with a television set across the entire United States of America. It tells you the power of television ads at that point. So 1970, going before that, a little bit before telemarketing was actually born, and companies started getting phone lists and banging people on the phone numbers, and that actually became a big marketing platform, and it generated a lot of attention from a lot of companies, and it actually helped a lot of companies boom. And still today, there's a lot of companies that are built on calling people, cold calling people, meaning that buying lists and calling them without even them expecting a phone call. They would call people that they had no idea who they were, and they were trying to close people. Well, that still goes on today, but that has been affected. So it's not dead, but it is struggling right now. Why is it struggling so much? Well, because when you open up your phone, on your Apple phone or on your Android phone, a lot of these companies, and what they're doing is that they're doing something called spam risk. When you have a call, you have a phone number that's cold that you just bought, and you call that phone number, that company, that carrier is going to detect your phone as a spam risk, and it's going to let the actual user of the phone know that you're a risk. And that's why it's being severely affected right now in this environment in 2021. So 1994, computers take off. 1990, mobile era begins. We start getting phones to be a part of the society. 1995 through 1997, look at what happened here. Search marketing becomes a thing. This is before we had Google. This is actually, at that point, we had Alta Vista and Lycos. They were the search engines in the early 1990s. But look at what happened here when just the internet got going. So in 1995, there were 16 million users of the search engines. Just 2 years later, 97 million people. Massive explosion, right? Quite incredible how that thing started taking off. So search marketing and the .com bubble began around 1997. All these companies started booming, and all these e-commerce companies that really were not positioned or established, they didn't have the finances, they started blowing up. 1998, it was Google and blogging. In the year 2000, the bubble absolutely burst right there. boom, everybody's fortunes that were being made on the dot-com bubble were completely gone. And that was a very big moment right there for the world. At that moment, we started getting everything to become stable, and then the world prepared for the new era of the internet. This whole era right here completely stopped on its tracks, and it prepared itself for some real stability and expansion. In 2001, inbound marketing begins. This is where all these platforms, including blogging on websites, they became like the way that you capture attention by giving value. So if you go back to the birth of giving value in exchange for business, it goes to 2001. This inbound marketing strategy began. 2003, the birth of social media. Wow. At that point, we got platforms like LinkedIn, like Facebook, like Instagram was years later, but Instagram, YouTube, etc. All these companies started getting born around these times over here. SEO 2005 was where you would get a lot of business. If you wanted to just get a lot of free traffic, all you got to do was rank at the top of Google. And a lot of companies came up with abilities to get themselves to the top of the search results. And that came plummeting down. SEO was destroyed. It's not the strategy anymore. Long-term value, inbound marketing is the way to go, because now even a website is going to get positioned by Google based on the amount of value that it possesses in it. Does SEO have no value? Yes, it does. But things have changed now. It's not about strategies anymore and tactics. It's about value that's going to take you in the right direction. 2019, an interesting point to highlight over here. Digital outspends traditional for the first time ever. For the first time ever in history of this new world that has been going on for a solid 2 decades, digital advertising spends more than traditional advertising. Newspapers, magazines, radios, television, ads, etc. All those things were finally caught up with digital advertising, which means that that shift continues, and it has continued so. 2020 is the year of COVID. It's the year where things got accelerated. This is a year in which social media becomes the #1 marketing channel of all time. The one that you all need to be a part of if you want to capture attention. COVID accelerated the e-com and online growth. Dramatic acceleration of platforms like Amazon, platforms like Shopify, e-commerce platforms, dramatic acceleration of social media channels to capture attention. 4 billion users of social media across the world, which means that we have a world that has 7-point-something billion people, almost 8 billion people at this point. At this point, as I'm recording this today, about half of the people in the world have access to the internet. That's it. The other half, they don't have access to it yet. It's a little shocking, right? Well, there's a lot of people in this world that don't have access to technology yet. One of the long-term goals of companies like Facebook, if you look at their 10-year plan, is to put satellites across the world so internet can be provided to every single human being on this planet. But right now, only half of us worldwide have access. And the ones that we have access, over 90% of us are active in one social media platform or more. There's only about 10 of them. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, Snapchat, TikTok, Pinterest, Twitter. All these platforms are very unique, and you got to be a part of all of them, because this is the 2021 strategy. How do you focus right now on generating inbound marketing, providing value through your content, your graphics, your articles, your podcasts, your videos, giving information away based on your expertise so you can generate inbound marketing. That's how you win the long-term game. That's how I built a $400 million in revenue over the last 5 years company, that you can actually see that with inbound marketing, we generate more attention than what we need. And that's how you scale the business in today's environment. So looking at the trend of marketing, you can see that this trend right here of traditional advertising was easily dominating for a good 500 years. Almost 600 years of total domination in regards to marketing and what we call outbound marketing. It is my professional opinion, being a digital marketer myself and obsessed with the subject of capturing attention, that we are 20 years into a marketing landscape that's going to last a good solid 500 years or more. which means that a lot of us are going to be able to benefit more than anybody else in the past did or anybody else in the future will. Why? Because we are at the beginning of the evolution of this new world called digital marketing, in which we can capture attention of billions of people across the planet with the push of a couple of buttons along the way. Hopefully that gave you a good idea and view of the two worlds and the two types of marketing that we have been going through our history in this planet. If you have a question about marketing, please send me a text message, 813-212-2196. And you can comment below and let me know what your thoughts are, and I will see you guys in the next episode.